Welcome to Yin and Young. The following story is taken from Chapter 2. I have called it The Burning Barrel and the Neighbours. I hope you enjoy it. Behind Bobby's house was a burning barrel made from a rusted oil drum. The sides of the drum were corroded unevenly through the walls of the barrel, forming a rough ring through which you can see the black ash of previous burnings. Scattered about those black ashes glowed the remains of an earlier fire, like a dragon after battle, slowly cooling down in the ash heap. Flames popped up and disappeared, some flames lasting mere moments and others licking along unconsumed fuel before disappearing once again. More predominant than the quiet heat was the smell of soot and the damp of morning dew that mingled in the air. The barrel was beyond the backyard toward the alley where Bobby wandered to explore his dimly lit world under a gray fall sky. There were bits of trash littered here and there. Bobby spotted a tomato soup label folded into the ground. He pulled it. Part of the label tore off into his hand. He came close to the barrel and threw the label in the middle. It lay on the embers where the center of the label quickly turned brown, then black, and the edge of the label caught fire. The appearance of flames stimulated Bobby as the label curled into ash, hovering a little, then burning out in a puff. Bobby looked back and saw the burning pile near the fence. There was always a pile of refuse waiting to be burned. He pulled a cereal box from under some newspapers, and now, a little more bravely, he tossed the cardboard into the barrel. The cereal box didn't catch fire as quickly as the soup label. It was laying flat on the red embers, and only after a delay began producing smoke. The edges slowly turned black, as did the center. Then, in a burst of sudden combustion, produced a sizable flame. Bobby felt a bit of warmth as his fascination grew. He turned back to the burning pile and noticed a jumble of twigs and bramble. He grabbed a branch and threw it in the barrel. Unlike the paper, it did not change color or catch flame. He turned and grabbed a thicker branch, but it was connected with the rest of the bramble, and when he pulled one, he pulled all. He lifted the sticks up to the barrel, letting his belly get close enough to feel metal cool against his skin. He pushed a small stack of branches and twigs over the edge, while other twigs still held fast and hung over the outside of the barrel. He grabbed these twigs and raised them up as well until it was all hoisted over the edge. Again there was no flame. On top of the burning pile were stacks of newspaper damped from morning dew. He threw these in also. They lay on top of the branches and again didn't produce the desired effect. After a minute or two, a wisp of whirling smoke snaked out, and from somewhere deep inside could be heard a soft hissing. Bobby, remaining curious, watched for a while. It smelled like the beehive burners they pass by when driving through the countryside. He loved that smell. Since there wasn't much happening, Bobby dropped another cereal box sideways into the barrel. He heard a soft crackling, and the smoke got thicker. Flames began licking up the side of the cereal box, and the hiss and movement of air in the barrel increased. Bobby was feeling good about cleaning up the burning pile and added a few more cardboard pieces, causing the materials in the barrel to shift, suddenly revealing the twigs, now in flame, heating the underside of the soggy newspapers more intensely. Bobby stood and watched. He was really making progress. He grabbed more cardboard thicker than the cereal boxes. When he turned to the barrel, he was struck by the appearance of larger flames. It was marvelous. Some of the flames reached higher than the edge of the barrel. He threw the cardboard a little more fearfully than before, and it came to rest partly inside the barrel and partly on the edge. But it too began to catch flame quicker than before. Now the newspaper had caught fire, and small bits of gray matter began floating up into the air. Bobby watched, curious, as one after another gray patch of material, sometimes glowing red, drifted up into the sky. The flames in the barrel crackled, and wet bits of fuel hissed steadily, the flames reaching higher and higher. Bobby grabbed a piece of wood with some bent nails in it. He dropped it into the barrel. It landed with a woof, and a shower of red embers floated into the air. He found a few other bits of wood and tossed them in as well. Bobby gazed at the dancing fire, absorbed in the pleasure of the flames. He watched with fascination the rolling smoke and the embers drifting lazily up, up, high in the semi-bright morning sky. He followed these ashes higher, followed the little black bits swirling about in the gray airiness above. He stared, trying to see as high as possible, and still there were floating embers. The crackling sounds in the barrel soothed him, as did the dry heat of the flames. The soot on his hands and the discovery of soot on his shirt and pants all contributed to his sheer wonder of life. He stood there, taking it all in. A wailing off in the distance barely penetrated his consciousness. As the sound grew louder and more insistent, Bobby became aware of a raucous noise appearing to his right in the form of a red truck, which lurched to a halt with a whoosh and rattle right next to where he was standing. Bobby's own quiet delight had been invaded. A man in a black uniform and hat jumped out of the truck, grabbed Bobby, and pulled him back toward the yard. He had the authority of a policeman. He looked firm, and Bobby felt both obedient and afraid. What was going to happen to him? Would he be taken away? A couple of other men emerged from the truck, and surveying the burning barrel, grabbed a metal rod from somewhere and made adjustments to what was inside the barrel. They spoke calmly and confidently to one another, the sound of determined men solving a problem. Ashes and embers again floated into the sky, but the materials in the barrel shifted and the flames settled. Something caused Bobby to move. Had one of the men spoken to him? "Where's your mother, kid?" He could only remember pulling the screen door and running inside the house, letting the door slam behind him, and in tears seeking out his mother. "Mom! Mommy!" he shouted. Arising from the basement, she appeared around the corner, asking, "What's going on?" She had heard the siren while doing the laundry. Bobby reached out for her embrace. She bent down and placed her hand on his back, as he hid his face in her leg, releasing his tears. After letting out several sobs, he breathed deep, deep lungfuls of air as the fear contained in his little body pulled at the innermost parts of him. In his mind he was telling her all the details, but all she heard was Bobby's incoherent distress and the sound of the truck with the men outside. Pulling away from Bobby, she turned and looked over the kitchen sink and out the window to the backyard. "Oh dear," she said. "I see what's going on." Turning toward him, she said, "Don't worry. Let me go out and talk to those men. You just sit here at the table, okay? Stay here. Don't worry. Mommy will be right back." He nodded his head, wiping his nose with his dirty arm, and began calming himself as his mother disappeared out the door. He could hear her voice talking and could hear male voices, but he couldn't make out what anyone was saying. Like the smoke rolling in the sky, their voices seemed to blend with the air. He thought he heard someone laugh. Bobby was already feeling better. At the beginning, when he saw the firemen, he thought it was a very serious situation, but now that his mother was involved, he should be all right. His mother returned through the door, and Bobby heard the truck starting up again. Bobby's mother began to speak, and the noise and rattle of the truck, the sound of the air brakes shushing, all faded away. "Come here." She smiled to Bobby. She grabbed a shirt and pair of pants, dropping them on the kitchen table. She pulled Bobby's shirt up tight over his large head and lifted him onto the cupboard beside the sink. She put soap in the wetted dishcloth and began to wipe the tear streaks from his face and the ash and soot from his arms and hands. "You were putting things from the burning pile into the barrel, right?" Bobby nodded. "Well, the neighbor lady's very nosy, and she was watching you. She thinks little boys shouldn't be playing around the burning barrel." "Neighbor lady?" Bobby asked. "Where?" "She was probably watching you from that window." In the days that followed, Bobby paid more attention to the window on the side of the neighbor's house, and he did see the neighbor lady looking out from there occasionally. Bobby didn't like the feeling of being watched, and was more careful after that. She shouldn't have done that, do you understand? The fire was not so bad, and even if it was bad, she didn't need to phone those men. When Mummy talked to them, they understood what had happened. They were not angry at you. Bobby's mummy looked him in the eyes. "Okay?" "Okay." Bobby trusted his mummy, and through her he learned to see the world. As each day passed, Bobby learned about his neighbors. There was the man who spanked his children on the bare bum. There was the lady who watched out her window and phoned the fire department when children played with fire. There were other neighbors also. Some did not live on the same street, but they lived in the same area. There was Crazy Mary. "Bobby, you see that old lady sitting on the bench over there?" his mother asked while they were getting a cart at the Safeway. "Look at her," his mother insisted. "That's Crazy Mary. You see she's holding a cane?" Bobby looked and saw a frowning, white-haired lady in a blue dress. She was sitting by the window on the other side of the checkout counters. She looked small and skinny. "That one?" he asked, pointing in her direction as his mother lifted him onto the shopping cart. "She's old," he said. He saw that she was thin and had very white hair. Her skin looked pale pink and waxy. She looked fragile, but also alert. "Right. She is old, and don't stare at her," his mother said sternly. "Just remember who she is. You stay away from her. She doesn't like children, and if you get close to her, she'll hit you with that cane." "Okay," Bobby said. He made sure to watch out for Crazy Mary after that. As soon as they got out of the car, he would look here and there for Crazy Mary. Sometimes he saw her, sometimes not. He only ever got close to her once after his mother purchased some groceries, but he remained on the other side of his mother as they pushed their cart past. He could hear Mary's scratchy voice saying something mean as they went by.